Imagine stepping through the weathered gates of John Wayne's sprawling Pacific Palisades Ranch, where the filmmaker's custom ranch house sits serenely against rolling hills and sweeping ocean views. For decades, fans have wandered these grounds on guided tours, marveling at his mounted trophies, dusty movie posters signed in bold ink, and the iconic Lone Star Saloon door that once led to his private study. Yet behind one locked mahogany cabinet, caretakers recently discovered a hidden compartment that revealed artifacts so unexpected they've rewritten our understanding of America's favorite cowboy. The story begins last spring, when the John Wayne Estate Foundation commissioned a thorough preservation audit in preparation for the Star's centennial celebrations. Archivist Marisol Vega, tasked with cataloging every photo album and document, noticed an odd bulge behind a stack of leather-bound scripts in Wayne's private library. When she pried at the wooden panel, tiny brass hinges clicked open to reveal two hand-lettered boxes labeled only Confidences and Legacy. Inside lay a trove of personal letters, unedited screen tests, and dusty film reels shrouded in time. None of these items had ever been publicly displayed, or even referenced in estate inventories. The first envelope she opened bore Wayne's own scrawl. For Greta, when the time is right. Inside lay a letter dated May 1965, addressed to his wife, Pilar. In it, he confessed doubts no publicity still ever captured. Sleepless nights spent questioning his public persona, guilt over long months on location away from family, and worries that he had built a career on a mythic ideal far removed from his private emotions. He wrote, "Behind every drawl and every swagger, I'm just a man wondering if I rode off too far into legend to ever come home again." It was a raw admission from a figure who cultivated toughness in every role he played. Next came a battered 16mm film canister marked Project Battle Song. Inside were never-before-seen war footage tests Wayne shot on his personal 8mm during World War II visits to the front lines. Grainy shots revealed him quietly interviewing soldiers amidst muddy foxholes, listening to their stories with genuine empathy and occasionally shedding tears off camera. Wayne had always talked publicly about his brief service as a civilian filmmaker, but no one knew he physically risked himself to capture these unvarnished wartime moments. The unedited reels show young GIs singing folk songs around a makeshift fire while Wayne flickers in the background, an intimate take on a veteran icon who rarely revealed his soft side. Perhaps most astonishing was a small wooden box containing 3 faded, unmarked vials of powder. A single typed note inside the lid reads simply, "Use sparingly for the pain." Forensic experts later confirmed the contents were nitroglycerin residue, prescription-grade heart medication Wayne secretly took in his final years to manage angina. Family lore held that he never complained of health issues, but these vials prove he dealt with chronic heart pain in private, even as he continued to ride horses and train for action sequences well after 60. The note suggested he feared being perceived as weak, deliberately concealing his illness behind gritted teeth and a steely gaze. But the revelations didn't end there. Underneath a false panel in Pilar Wayne's writing desk, archivists found a stack of sealed envelopes addressed to my son. Inside, Duke Jr. discovered letters where John Wayne poured out his regrets about not spending enough time with his children amid shooting schedules and public appearances. He explained how he hoped his legacy, on screen and off, would teach them about honor, hard work, and loving family above all else. These letters were never mailed. They lay untouched for over 40 years, waiting to bridge the gap between an on-screen giant and a father who worried he'd missed his own family's private milestones. Even the estate's most loyal advisors were stunned. When war-test film footage and personal confessions emerged, longtime biographers scrambled their notes to reconcile the larger-than-life Duke with these intimate vulnerabilities. Fans raced to social media to debate whether Wayne's guarded admissions tarnished his legend or enriched it with newfound depth. Meanwhile, the foundation announced plans to incorporate these finds into a traveling exhibit titled John Wayne Unmasked, promising audiences the opportunity to see the man behind the icon in a light no one could have anticipated. These initial discoveries represent just the beginning of a hidden world sealed within the walls of Wayne's estate. From secret film experiments to private health battles and unfettered father-son love letters, The Duke's legacy now stands at a crossroads between myth and man. In Section 2, we will uncover the disputed documents that threaten to rewrite Hollywood history, including scripts Wayne vetoed, unrecorded interviews, and a shocking legal provision hidden in his will. Just weeks after revealing Wayne's private letters and wartime reels, archivists unearthed a second trove of earth-shattering documents that have Hollywood historians scrambling to rewrite the Duke's legacy. Tucked away behind a false back panel in Wayne's mahogany-screened archive room were three thick folders stamped top shelf, John's only. Inside lay handwritten scripts he'd vetoed, unrecorded interview transcripts, and a buried codicil in his will so explosive it could reshape every biopic ever made about him. The most sensational find was a completed screenplay for a film Wayne ultimately refused to shoot. Pinned under the working title The Last Outlaw, the script depicted a grittier, more morally ambiguous Western hero who wrestled with regret after accidentally killing an outlaw in cold blood. Wayne's margin notes brimmed with excoriating self-critique, comments like, "Too dark," "Not the man I want to be," and "Drop the anti-hero angle," must be uplifting scrawled in bold red ink. For decades, fans assumed Wayne chose his roles to reinforce a steadfast cowboy persona. Now, we know he deliberately excised a performance that might have cast him in shades of gray, revealing a man fiercely protective of his heroic image. Equally mystifying were typed invoices labeled unpublished interviews, confidential. They contained transcripts of private sit-downs Wayne granted to fledgling documentarians in the late 1970s. In one exchange, he confessed that the pressures of stardom once drove him to drink too much, hurt family, and lose sight of faith. In another, he admitted to harboring Beethoven-level aspirations for his wartime footage, lamenting he never had the creative freedom or studio support to craft a cinematic masterpiece from raw troop interviews. These frank admissions contradict the public Wayne who rarely spoke of personal failures on camera, suggesting he sought a level of artistic legacy far beyond the cowboy roles he embraced. The codicil in his will, however, may prove the most consequential. Archivists discovered a second codicil, hidden inside a secured envelope stamped Duke's deepest wish. Unlike the public will, which bequeathed his estate largely to Pilar and their children, this clandestine note directed a substantial portion of his assets to establishing a John Wayne Film Trust, an endowment dedicated to preserving and advancing independent, avant-garde cinema. Wayne wrote that if his estate ever exceeded $50 million, funds should flow to support truth-tellers, risk-takers, storytellers untamed by box office chains. In a final flourish, he added, "Let my myth not stifle voices that need wings." This buried instruction conflicts with the prevailing narrative that Wayne sought only to cement his mainstream legend, revealing instead an undercurrent of rebellious support for boundary-pushing filmmakers. News of this hidden trust has sent tremors through the industry. Major studios, which long benefited from Wayne-themed merchandising and licensing, now face the prospect that a chunk of revenue might redirect to indie film grants. Agents and attorneys are poring over probate filings, preparing for debates over enforceability. Film scholars predict this codicil could spark a renaissance in low-budget filmmaking, financed by the estate of one of Hollywood's most iconic figures. Some interpret it as Wayne's final act of defiance, ensuring that even in death, the Duke's influence would champion creative risk over safe returns. Meanwhile, the archive revealed dozens of unbroadcast audio recordings, candid fragments of Wayne recounting family lore and personal parables meant never to be public. In one breathy tape, he narrated a story of riding alongside Native American tribes during a Western shoot, praising their traditions and lamenting how Hollywood too often caricatured indigenous cultures. In another, he spoke gently about nurturing young actors on set, describing how he'd quietly coach extras in their first lines rather than grandstand for directors. These tapes paint a portrait of a mentor and cultural interlocutor, a facet of Wayne rarely celebrated in standard film retrospectives. Not everyone greeted these revelations with open arms. Some Wayne loyalists balk at the idea that the Duke cast himself in morally conflicted roles or harbored clandestine support for indie cinema. Social media factions have formed, with pure Duke advocates denouncing archivists for tainting the legend, while New Duke proponents call for an honest reassessment that embraces his hidden complexity. Film festivals are already proposing retrospective programs divided between classics of the Duke and Wayne's what-ifs, showcasing scripts he abandoned and readings of his private interviews. Amid these debates, the John Wayne Estate Foundation has pledged transparency. They announced a public symposium where archivists will present facsimiles of the vetoed scripts, play selected interview clips, and hold panels on the legal intricacies of the trust provision. Pilar Wayne and Duke Jr. plan to attend, offering personal reflections on how these documents revealed a side of John Wayne they only glimpsed in private. The Foundation's goal: to foster dialogue that respects Wayne's multifaceted life while preserving the integrity of his on-screen legend. These disputed documents have cracked open a hidden chamber of John Wayne's story, one where ego, artistry, vulnerability, and rebellion intermingle. The Duke's estate stands at a crossroads: to maintain the unyielding icon of Western heroism or to embrace a richer narrative of an artist who, behind closed doors, sought to challenge norms and champion the underdog. In Section 3, we'll delve into the industry and fan reactions to these bombshells, exploring how Hollywood's power structures and grassroots communities are grappling with the new Duke unveiled by these secret papers. Almost overnight, the revelations from John Wayne's private archive ignited a storm of reactions across Hollywood and beyond. Die-hard fans flooded social media, some arguing that Wayne's carefully crafted image of unerring heroism had been betrayed. Hashtags like #RealDuke versus Mythic Duke trended on Twitter, with purists insisting that the legend should remain untarnished and revisionists celebrating a chance to see the man behind the myth. Discussion boards split into camps, one condemning the unveiling of vetoed antihero scripts as sacrilege, another applauding the Duke's hidden support for boundary-pushing filmmakers as a courageous final act. The tension between preserving nostalgia and embracing complexity laid bare the emotional stakes of rewriting any icon's story. Industry insiders were equally divided. Major studios that had licensed John Wayne's likeness for decades worried about the implications of the secret film trust codicil. If a significant slice of estate revenue were redirected toward indie projects, big-budget productions could see their profits eroded. Some executives privately muttered about renegotiating future licensing deals, while others viewed the trust as a noble gesture that might ultimately elevate the Duke's posthumous reputation. Independent producers and art house directors, however, cheered the prospect, already drafting grant applications in hopes of securing Wayne's backing. For many of them, the Duke's estate had suddenly become the most unexpected patron in the business, and conversations buzzed about how to pitch visionary scripts with an underdog spirit. Simultaneously, academic circles seized upon the controversy to launch scholarly inquiries. Film studies departments announced conferences on American Myths Revisited, using Wayne's archive as a case study in the construction of celebrity identity. Professors published essays in peer-reviewed journals that examined the ethical dimensions of posthumous disclosures, questioning whether unearthing suppressed material constituted historical justice or sensationalistic exploitation. Memorabilia collectors and dealers organized panels on provenance, debating whether a screenplay vetoed by Wayne could be certified worthy of public display. Museums speculated about mounting traveling exhibitions that paired Wayne's original props with facsimile script pages, framing each artifact within a narrative of evolving heroism. Meanwhile, the merchandise machine powered onward. John Wayne, branded apparel, mugs, and movie box sets saw a surge in sales as fans rushed to commemorate his centennial in light of the fresh revelations. Retailers marketed collectible editions featuring reproductions of the hidden codicil and script notes, while online auction houses reported bidding wars for original film cans and hand-scripted letters. Some fans balked at the commercialization of intimate materials, accusing the Foundation of exploiting personal artifacts for profit. Others viewed these products as tangible ways to participate in a global conversation about legacy and authenticity. Shopping carts filled with unmasked Duke memorabilia revealed how consumer culture both responds to and shapes historical narratives. On the personal front, Pilar Wayne and their son, John Wayne Jr., found themselves navigating uncharted territory. Pilar released a statement expressing pride in her husband's generosity toward emerging talent, but also cautioning against misinterpretation of his private papers. She emphasized that John Wayne's public persona and private self, though occasionally at odds, were both integral to understanding his full humanity. Duke Jr., for his part, acknowledged that reading his father's hidden memos had been surreal and enlightening, revealing sides of a parent he only glimpsed as a child. He hinted that some materials might be incorporated into an authorized biography, one that would aim to weave the mainstream legend with authentic personal reflections. As the discourse advanced, filmmakers who had previously chosen to keep Wayne-themed documentaries strictly chronological began reconsidering their narratives. Directors announced plans for hybrid projects that intercut classic Wayne clips with dramatized readings of his vetoed Western scripts, allowing audiences to experience untold scenarios. Screenwriters pitched scripts exploring an alternate universe where Wayne embraced moral ambiguity, inviting viewers to ponder what might have shifted if the Duke had taken more daring roles. These meta-narratives, framing history as malleable rather than fixed, suggested a new era of creative engagement with cinematic icons. Throughout these debates, the John Wayne Estate Foundation maintained a stance of open dialogue. They scheduled a public symposium for early next quarter, promising archivists presentations, Q&A sessions with legal experts, and roundtables featuring film buffs and historians. The event would be live-streamed to ensure global participation, reinforcing the estate's commitment to transparency. In doing so, they hoped to channel the fervor into constructive conversations rather than polarizing sound bites. And as fans, scholars, and filmmakers prepare for that gathering, one thing becomes clear. The evolving narrative of John Wayne's life will not settle back into simplistic hero worship or unmitigated critique. Instead, it will persist as a rich, contested dialogue, one that challenges us to reconcile legend with truth, myth with mortal experience. The revelation of John Wayne's buried film trust codicil did more than spark outrage and debate. It galvanized action across the industry. Within a week of the High Court's preliminary ruling, independent producers began drafting proposals for the Duke's Vanguard Grant, named in honor of Wayne's directive to support fearless storytellers. The John Wayne Film Trust announced an open call for submissions, inviting writers and directors to pitch projects that challenge conventions and amplify underrepresented voices. Grant guidelines emphasize creative risk over commercial viability, carrying forward Wayne's hidden wish to underwrite cinema that dared defy the status quo. Already, applicants have ranged from documentary teams chronicling immigrant narratives to genre filmmakers blending horror and social commentary in novel ways. Meanwhile, studios felt the first tremors of change. Several major production companies revisited their licensing agreements with the Wayne estate, negotiating to allocate a small percentage of profits. From Duke-branded films and merchandise directly to the trust, executives acknowledged that this realignment honored the Duke's final intentions and offered a fresh marketing angle. Mainstream blockbusters could now boast their support of indie cinema. Even theme park concessions selling Wayne-themed souvenirs pledged a cut of each sale to fund creative residencies. The synergy between commercial and philanthropic goals exemplifies how Wayne's hidden codicil has reshaped financial flows in Hollywood, turning what once was pure profit into purpose-driven investments. On the philanthropic front, the Wayne Estate Foundation convened a panel of cultural advisors, including film historians, community activists, and former collaborators, to ensure the trust's grants reflect Wayne's multifaceted legacy. They prioritized outreach to regions historically underserved by film funding, from rural American towns to emerging hubs in Africa and Asia. The first round of grants awards will cover script development labs in New Mexico, a cinematography scholarship in Kenya, and community filmmaking workshops in rural England. Each initiative carries Wayne's name with humility, replacing the mythic cowboy image with a message: dare to dream beyond the frontier. At the same time, legal teams continued to refine the trust's governance structure. Estate lawyers worked with nonprofit specialists to craft bylaws ensuring that no single trustee could dominate grant decisions. Instead, an advisory board drawn from filmmakers, ethicists, and Wayne family members would vote on projects, mirroring the diversity Wayne secretly championed. This multilateral approach guards against consolidation of power and honors the Duke's call for pluralistic support of visionaries. Transparency mandates were written into the bylaws. Each grant cycle will be accompanied by public reports detailing recipient achievements, budget breakdowns, and long-term impact assessments. Beyond formal grant-making, the Wayne Film Trust sparked creative collaborations among future benefactors. Cattle ranchers and Western heritage organizations, long partners in Wayne's earlier philanthropic work, pledged matching funds for cinematography grants that document ranching culture in decline. Architects offered to restore historic Cinecittà studios under the Trust's sponsorship, preserving Rome's Golden Age soundstages for experimental European filmmakers. Even tech startups joined in. A Los Angeles-based VR company volunteered to produce immersive experiences based on scripts funded by the Trust, blending Wayne's frontier spirit with cutting-edge storytelling tools. These partnerships demonstrate how a single buried clause can ripple outward, inspiring cross-sector alliances that defy disciplinary boundaries. Public response has been overwhelmingly positive among younger audiences. Film schools report a surge in John Wayne fiber. Minors selecting screenwriting courses that focus on genre subversion and cultural critique. Campus film clubs host What Would Duke Do? Nights, screening canonical Wayne films alongside indie riffs that reinterpret them through post-colonial or feminist lenses. Student filmmakers brainstorm how to pay homage to Wayne's persona while simultaneously interrogating the myths he embodied. These conversations evoke the paradox Wayne wrestled with in his hidden scripts, torn between myth-making and moral complexity, and bring his true last wish into a vibrant dialogue with the next generation. Even fan communities, once polarized, have found common ground in supporting the Trust. Online forums dedicated to Wayne now include threads celebrating grant winners, sharing pitches, and coordinating mentorship opportunities. Social media influencers in the film space host livestream fundraisers, auctioning classic Wayne memorabilia to boost the Trust's endowment. In so doing, they transform fandom into fellowship, channeling nostalgia into action. The same passion that once fueled debates over myth versus man now drives collaborative efforts to uphold Wayne's posthumous commitment to artistic freedom. Across Hollywood's Gilded Gates and community art centers alike, John Wayne's hidden codicil has done what few public pronouncements could. It has redirected the flow of resources, reshaped alliances, and redefined legacy. The legend of the Duke now walks hand in hand with the reality of his unheralded generosity, proving that even in death, an icon can plant seeds of innovation and empathy. As we gather momentum around the Duke's Vanguard Grant and its first laureates, we see that behind every cinematic frontier Wayne once portrayed lies an invitation to ride boldly into uncharted territories of storytelling. Guided by the spirit of a man who knew the greatest adventures often play out off-screen, a S-word spread that the Duke's Vanguard Grant had awarded its inaugural round of funding. A wave of creativity rippled across the filmmaking world. In Albuquerque, a team of Navajo filmmakers used their grant to produce a short honoring indigenous cowboys, blending traditional storytelling with sweeping desert panoramas. In Johannesburg, South African documentarians launched a verite series on township youth forging skate culture amid economic hardship. And in Kyoto, Japan, experimental animators crafted a thought-provoking homage to samurai cinema, twisting Wayne's archetype into an entirely new visual language. These projects demonstrated how John Wayne's hidden wishes had ignited a renaissance of boundary-pushing cinema on every continent. Fans once divided by #wars now found themselves celebrating each grant recipient's premiere, trading links and sharing clips as eagerly as they once collected vintage Wayne memorabilia. Online forums that had once argued over the purity of the Duke's legend began posting trailer embeds and behind-the-scenes interviews with nascent directors whose work might never have found support without the Trust. Social media influencers in the film community pivoted from reaction videos to collaboration announcements, offering to mentor grant winners in marketing, distribution, and festival strategy. In this spontaneous flowering of solidarity, nostalgia fused with innovation, proving that Wayne's secret codicil could breathe fresh life into a global community of creators. Meanwhile, merchandising partners embraced their evolving role. Western wear brands known for selling Duke-branded jeans and hats pledged to redirect a portion of every sale toward discovery grants for screenwriters from underrepresented backgrounds. Artisan saddle makers offered custom production design prizes, sponsoring emerging costume designers who reimagined Wayne's classic wardrobe for a new era. Even spirit labels rebranded their Duke Bourbon campaigns, running limited edition bottles with award-winning short film access codes printed on the packaging. These creative partnerships translated the Duke's frontier legacy into concrete support for a diverse next generation of storytellers. Inside the archives, caretakers continued to explore Logan Place, unearthing new context for the Duke's clandestine intentions. Architectural historians studying his private study found that the hidden compartments had been expertly installed by a master woodworker known for elaborate furniture in aristocratic estates. Chemical analyses on the residue inside old film cans confirmed that Wayne personally handled nitrate stock, revealing a hands-on engagement with the technical side of filmmaking. These discoveries underscored his commitment not only to artistic vision, but to the craft itself, inspiring grant recipients to adopt a similarly meticulous approach to their own work. As the trust matured, its legal foundations evolved to meet expanding responsibilities. Trustees introduced a sliding application window, allowing smaller microgrants for experimental projects and larger development funds for collaborative features. A new review committee comprised of past Vanguard grant recipients provided peer evaluation, ensuring that the program remained responsive to emerging trends rather than static traditions. This peer-driven model honored the Duke's call to uplift fresh voices, entrusting his legacy to those best positioned to interpret and amplify its spirit. Educational institutions also embraced this new chapter of Wayne's narrative. UCLA's School of Theater, Film and Television announced a Duke Fellowship for graduate students studying the interplay between myth-making and authenticity in American cinema. The fellowship includes archival residencies at Logan Place, where scholars can examine Wayne's personal letters, vetoed scripts, and film tests in situ. Similar programs launched at the University of Texas and the University of Melbourne, sparking international networks of archival research that draw connections between cinematic icons and contemporary creative practice. Once the domain of biographers and film historians, Wayne's private world now serves as a living classroom for next-generation storytellers and scholars. In rural Texas and Montana, community cinemas partnered with the Duke John Wayne Film Trust to host outdoor screenings of both classic Wayne films and Vanguard-funded shorts. These events paired rowdy line dances to stirring Western scores with post-screening discussions led by local filmmakers and social workers. The juxtaposition of iconic cowboy narratives with grassroots documentaries about modern frontier life embodied the Trust's mission to bridge past and present, legend and lived experience, in service of a richer cultural dialogue. Even as the Trust's impact deepened, fans and creators alike remained vigilant for new revelations in the Duke's personal archive. The Logan Place Ledger continued to record each cabinet opening, floorboard inspection, and conservation update in real time. Every time a conservator uncovered an unseen film reel or a family member donated a previously unknown letter, notifications pinged the Trust's subscriber network, fueling anticipation for the next chapter in Wayne's evolving story. This commitment to transparency ensured that Wayne's voice, whether echoing from a hidden script page or informing a global grant program, remained central to every development. Through these varied initiatives, John Wayne's hidden codicil has become far more than a legal curiosity. It's a living testament to the power of vision and courage. By channeling estate revenues into pioneering filmmakers, the Duke's Vanguard grant has transformed a whispered last wish into a roaring chorus of diverse stories. And as emerging artists ride into uncharted realms of narrative possibility, they do so under the banner of a legend who, in secret, championed their right to break free from convention. In the final section, we'll explore how this ongoing legacy continues to inspire not only film projects, but broader conversations about stewardship, creativity, and the enduring bond between mythic heroes and the human hearts they leave behind. As the Duke's Vanguard grant enters its first full year, ripples of transformation have spread across every corner of the storytelling world. From micro-budget productions in Maine to digital art collectives in Manila, Each initiative funded under John Wayne's hidden codicil embodies a living testament to the man who, behind closed doors, dared to champion voices unheard. Emerging filmmakers funded by the trust report that their projects, once stymied by gatekeepers, now move forward with renewed momentum. In the Australian outback, a team of Indigenous directors is crafting a bold reimagining of frontier mythology, weaving Dreamtime stories into a visceral, modern landscape. In Sao Paulo, a collective uses smartphone cameras and guerrilla techniques to expose urban inequalities, funding enabled by that buried codicil. Across the globe, Wayne's legacy has transcended saloons and prairie vistas to become a nexus of creative rebellion. Inside Logan Place, the transformation is equally profound. Once a repository of personal secrets, the ranch house has morphed into a dynamic residency where visiting artists live and work amid Wayne's original furnishings. The hidden compartments that once stored private letters now serve as inspiration cabinets, spaces where residents deposit their own reflections, creating an evolving dialogue between past and present. Walls formerly lined with vintage posters now display rotating exhibitions of grant recipients' concept art. The very bookshelves that housed Wayne's personal library host occasional extract exchange evenings, where participants leaf through original journal pages before adding their own handwritten notes about how Wayne's hidden vulnerabilities resonate with their artistic journeys. Educational institutions have woven the Vanguard grant model into curricula, creating courses on legacy stewardship that span disciplines: film, literature, archival science, even organizational ethics. At Brown University, a course titled Frontiers Unveiled, Ethics and Archives challenges students to design hypothetical grant programs based on other artists' private archives, drawing direct lines to the governance structure pioneered by Wayne's Trust. Stanford hosts seminars on codicils as catalysts, exploring how a single handwritten clause can redirect cultural capital towards social good. These academic explorations underscore a newfound understanding. Estates need not simply preserve history, they can actively shape the future. On the technology front, the Logan Place Ledger has inspired a wave of new platforms. Architects of blockchain-based provenance tools cite the Ledger's Open Update Protocol as a gold standard for transparency in heritage management. Digital archives constructed for car races or classical concerts adopt similar real-time notification systems whenever new items are cataloged. Archivists from the Louvre to Tokyo's National Diet Library discuss implementing interactive digital safes that mimic Logan Place's secret compartments, allowing patrons to unlock new content by completing educational quizzes or participating in community challenges. This cross-pollination of innovation shows how one estate's commitment to respectful mystery can influence global best practices. Moreover, the Duke's hidden codicil continues to resonate in the philanthropic landscape beyond film. Arts councils in Canada and Sweden have begun soliciting proposals for initiatives that mirror Wayne's blend of mythic allure and substantive impact, programs that fund both experimental dance projects and community journalism ventures. Literary trusts are adapting the model to underwrite first-time authors whose narratives challenge mainstream publishing norms. Even scientific grants have taken note. A wildlife conservation fund in Kenya declared its program inspired by the Duke's emphasis on untamed voices, providing seed money for local researchers studying endangered species rarely featured in Western media. Critically, the ripple effects extend into public discourse on legacy. Journalists now frame celebrity estate news with an eye towards stewardship and community uplift, rather than scandal or sensationalism. Cultural commentators laud John Wayne's posthumous vision as a clarion example of how personal intentions, once unlocked, can galvanize collective creativity. When asked about the Duke's influence in a recent profile, a leading arts critic remarked, "He slipped instructions into a safe panel like seeds in soil. Now they've sprouted into a forest of new voices." Such reflections underscore a shift. Legacy has evolved from a static artifact into an active process shaped by intentional generosity. As the John Wayne Film Trust prepares for its second grant cycle, it has already announced enhancements guided by recipient feedback, expanded support for mental health resources on set, microgrants for experimental sound design, and fellowship opportunities in virtual reality storytelling. Each new program honors the spirit of Wayne's private wish to fund risk-takers, ensuring that the trust remains responsive to the evolving needs of storytellers on today's frontiers. The estate's advisory board, which now includes alumni of the inaugural cohort, meets quarterly in a roundtable format, an embodiment of the Duke's conviction that decisions about the future of art should never rest solely in the hands of a single gatekeeper. In reflecting on this ongoing journey, one truth shines through. The greatest power of a hidden revelation lies not in its shock value, but in the opportunities it unlocks. John Wayne's hidden codicil transformed his estate from a monument to personal success into a living workshop for the world's unsung creatives. It has shown that a single handwritten clause, buried for decades, can crack open new horizons of possibility. Now, as emerging artists complete films shot under moonlit skies, classical musicians compose symphonies inspired by Wayne's frontier bravado, and virtual storytellers reanimate those secret compartments in digital realms, his legacy lives not only on screen, but in every courageous act of imagination it empowers. So, if you ever find yourself walking the halls of Logan Place, gaze beyond the mounted trophies and consider the treasures still concealed behind weathered panels. The true artifacts of value are not relics of a bygone star, but the voices kindled by his final testament. And as these voices gather strength, so too does the enduring bond between myth and humanity. An invitation from the Duke himself to ride bravely into uncharted territories of art, fueled by the knowledge that sometimes the most profound legacies are those whispered in secret, then shared with the world.